Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichrono Livracha, blessed memory, points out that when you visit Washington, D.C., you're surrounded by storytelling. When you walk past the Lincoln Memorial, a narrative of American history is revealed. To one side of the Lincoln Memorial, we see the Gettysburg Address, the infamous opening words, 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, so on and so on. The famous speech Lincoln delivered during the American Civil War at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery, now known as the Gettysburg National Cemetery. And to his other side, his second inaugural speech, words he delivered in 1865 with plans for healing a once divided nation. And if you pass through the Roosevelt Memorial, each wall has key sayings from his life, like, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Jefferson Memorial, same thing. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men or people are created equal, and so on and so on. Each of these structures share a bit of history through a narrative, history that is based on the human experience. Think back for a moment with me to your favorite teacher growing up, aside from Rabbi Klein and I, obviously. We know you're your favorite teachers, but we know you've had others. The teachers that you really enjoyed learning with, the ones that you were able to absorb new information, even though you, let's just say, disliked the subject matter, perhaps. But they were so captivating, so you were able to engage with them deeply, even on a subject that you weren't enthusiastic about. Those teachers, these monuments, have something very important in common. Their ability to make something relatable, allowing you to connect to the material or to the history. And this usually happens in the form of something that is interpersonal, like a narrative. Rabbi Sachs, who is British, jokes and says that when you visit famous historical sites in London, there are no stories being told. The Churchill Memorial says, Churchill. No famous quotes or historical retellings, and it's not like Churchill lacks any famous sayings. And in making this comparison, he differentiates between two kinds of societies, a traditional society and a covenant society. He contends that in a traditional society, like England, you don't need any kind of explanation. You know who certain people or places are, and you take them at face value. Covenant society is not based on tradition for tradition's sake. They don't value history because it's old. They remember the past and its events in the past that led to the collective determination that move people to create this society in the first place. Covenant societies exist not because they're old. They honor a moral pledge or undertaking that is fueled by the story, and we must share the narrative with generations thereafter, because it is the story that links these generations and gives the people purpose. We read the Gettysburg Address, the words from Jefferson's memorial, with pride because we collectively believe them to be true, and they drive our raison d'être today, our reason for existing today. And the people that have brilliantly exemplified a covenant society is Israel, the Jewish people. The moral commitment has been handed down in successive generations in story form, not as a conquest or economic gain, but to remind people why they are there. And our American forefathers and foremothers took a page out of our Torah in the way that they created and echoed their messaging as well. This week, we are in Parashat Ki Tavo in the book of Deuteronomy, where we hear Moses' last oration. He gives one more speech before he dies in the next Torah portion, but he's in his final days, and he's about to pass the responsibility down to Joshua. And in this part of the book of Deuteronomy, we see the essence of the entire Torah. It summarizes Israel's history highlighted by the establishment of the covenant. In the Plaut Torah commentary, the editor points out that the final chapter, Appeal, contains two important theological statements. One, future generations too will be bound by the covenant. That's you and me. And two, the book that testified to that covenant is accessible to all of Israel. It is not a hidden document in the possession of a special caste. To illustrate this, in chapter 26 of Deuteronomy, we read about the first fruits. We're told that we are to take some of every of our first fruits of the soil, which you harvest from the land that the Eternal your God is giving you, put it in the basket, and go to the place where the Eternal your God will choose to establish the divine name. And when you arrive to the place where we give of our first fruits, we do not just hand them to the priests and say, see you later. No. Verses 5-7 of this chapter say, וענית ואמרת לפני אדוני אלוהיך, ארמי עובד אבי, וירד מצרימה, ויגר שם במתי מעט, ויהי שם לגוי גדול, עצום ורב. Hopefully these words maybe sound familiar. You shall then recite as follows before your God Adonai, my father was a fugitive Aramean. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there, but there he became a great and very populous nation. ויראו אותנו המצרים ויענונו ויתנו עלינו עבודה קשה. The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us. They imposed heavy labor upon us. ונצעק אל אדוני אלוהי אבותינו, וישמע אדוני את קולנו, וירא את עוננו ואת עמלנו ואת לחצנו. We cried to Adonai, the God of our ancestors, and Adonai heard our plea and saw our plight, our misery, and our oppression. Where is this text from? 20 points. Anyone? Haggadah. Good, yes, that's right. It is from our Haggadah. And so now we can bring our first fruits because I arrived to this place not by accident, but because I was taken out of Egypt, where I was a slave. And now I have the freedom to bring my first fruits. We see in our Torah that each and every person is responsible for themselves and must carry out the retelling of the story. And today, we retell this story of Passover, even though we don't bring first fruits, and there is no temple except for this one, and we don't bring fruits, we bring something else. But covenant societies use storytelling to bring people together and help them surface their past to make a productive present and in turn future. Covenant societies are not ethnic societies bound by common racial origin. They make room for the other. Of course, the most famous person to join into the Jewish covenant is Ruth, who said to her mother Naomi, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Ruth takes the story of the Israelites as her own. Rabbi Sachs reminds that gerut, or conversion, is about acquiring citizenship in the Jewish nation, not just a shift in identity or practice. It is the understanding and becoming part of that Jewish story. There's that story that a person who wants to become Jewish has to go see their rabbi 3 times. They're turned away, they come back, turned away, and then that story is not really true, but when people do come to be part of the Jewish people, of the Jewish faith, we encourage them to learn for a year. And not just learning from our texts, although also, but it takes a year to really experience the Jewish calendar. I can tell them what a shofar is, but when they hear it for themselves at the end of Ne'ilah, at the end of Yom Kippur, it's not something that can be studied. Lighting the Shabbat candles is different than the lavender-scented candle you have in your bathroom. There's a blessing, we bring in their Shabbat, and on Shabbat we kindle the light. We don't just light it, we kindle it. It's different. We are now in the month of Elul, approaching our days of awe. What is the story that you are sharing with yourself? with your family? How are you sharing your story of your covenant? We are very excited and looking forward to answering those questions together with you in the coming weeks and, of course, years, but certainly as we prepare for our high holidays. Shabbat Shalom.